Bible Cap for the week of April 12th to April 18th, 2020. In our reading this week, we experienced the death of three great men: Samuel the prophet, Saul the first anointed king of Israel, and Jonathan the son of Saul, arguably David's greatest friend. The assigned texts lead us in a back and forth between the latter chapters of 1 Samuel and some key psalms. 1 Samuel narrative tells us what actions our hero David is taking, while the Psalms give us a look into his emotional mindset. But before we dive into the principal learnings from the text, this week's recap warrants a look back at the previous week to give us some context for some of our discussion for this week. I want us to remember that David was anointed king, the leader of God's people. Not only was there the physical anointment with the oil, but there was also the anointing and pouring out of the Holy Spirit on him. Yet, in the narrative, David was not experiencing all the things you would expect for a king. He was a man on the run, a man living among the enemy, a man residing in caves, a man whose followers were the destitute, the disenfranchised, and some very wicked men. A man who was driven to desperate acts. Via the Psalms, we get the emotional measure of David. We hear his lament, his calling out to God, asking, how long shall he continue to suffer? We hear his acknowledgement of God's supremacy over all things in all situations. We hear his surrender to God's will and hear his thanksgiving for God's vindication. So one of the things that Samuel spoke of in his bodily and his spiritual forms is God's expectation of obedience. In his trials, God cautioned the soon-to-be king on how to deal with Saul. Yet, David was placed in a situation a number of times where he could have fulfilled his heart's desire, where he could have acted on the counsel of men and free himself from Saul. But David refused to strike down the Lord's anointed because God told him it was not for him to do it and cautioned him against doing it. So what I ask of you today is if you can take heed and examine your lives and ask yourselves, are you one to be obedient and wait on the trust and counsel of the Lord? Or you want to go against his will, grasping at what you think is best? What I wish for all of us is to be able to truthfully echo David's words from Psalm 17, where he said, hear me, Lord, my plea is just. Listen to my cry. Hear my prayer. It does not rise from deceitful lips. Let my vindication come from you. May your eyes see what is right. Though you probe my heart, though you examine me at night and test me, you will find that I have planned no evil. My mouth has not transgressed. Though people try to bribe me, I have kept myself from the ways of the violent. Through what your lips have commanded, my steps have held to your path. My feet have not stumbled. This is beautiful sense of purity and obedience. That this is what all of us should really strive for. And we should take after David in his life. So next week, we will continue to look at David's rise to royalty. We will have a heavy concentration in the book of Psalms. We'll look into the first book of Chronicles with a light touch of 2 Samuel. So may your reading be inspiring. Thank you, and God bless.